winning today, Game 7. So now OKC moves on to the Western Conference Finals. And we got to talk about what's going to happen with Denver this offseason because we obviously know, they fired the head coach, they fired the general manager, and now it's looking like they're going to make some potential major roster changes. So first let's talk about OKC because congratulations to them. They go to the Western Conference Finals and they still haven't announced MVP, but like I've been saying, I believe it's Shea. And whenever they do announce it, I think it is Shea. And so congratulations to Shea potentially, when he does, if he does win the award. So now we have the potential MVP playing, I know they're not going to guard each other, but potential MVP Shea versus Anthony Edwards. So that should be a fun matchup. So OKC, by a lot of people's standards, has been the best team all year or the favorite to go to the finals or win the championship. Like a lot of people have picked them. And the Celtics were obviously the other team that people thought were the favorite. And so OKC is one step closer to that. And today, if you watched my live stream last night, actually, I literally, I'm not going to lie, I kind of predicted the game, how it went like quarter by quarter. I said, I believe in the first quarter. And I said, potentially even part of the second quarter. It's going to be a close game. Like Denver is going to keep it close and, match their firepower and all that kind of stuff. And then I said by the second half, like it's going to be a blowout because Denver's not going to be able to sustain what OKC is able to do because they can throw 10 people out there who can play. Like they're not just throwing 10 people out there. Legitimate 10-man rotation of legit good NBA players. So I said in the end, OKC is going to end up blowing them out because Denver's not going to be able to match that firepower. So that really is what happened. So congratulations to OKC. And Jalen Williams, by the way, I think he had 17 points in the second quarter. Shout out to him. Like, after a game 6 where he only had 6 points, he really bounced back. So shout out to him. So now we talk about Denver a little bit and potential off-season moves and stuff like that because we may be seeing the last time that we see Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., I think more so Michael Porter Jr., on Denver. I think there's a chance, I never call for someone to be traded, right? But like, I do think there's a chance Jamal Murray could be, traded and moved because you got to maximize Jokic's, prime. Like, Jokic is that good. You got to maximize his prime and build a championship contender around him. And to be fair to Jamal and Michael Porter Jr., I had been saying, the fact that they let go of Bruce Brown and Jeff Green and KCP, like, they depleted their depth. And there may have been a chance if they let's just say they could run it back. Like, let's just say everybody on that team came back the next year. Who's to say they wouldn't have gone back to back, right? Like, I'm not saying that, Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, more so Michael Porter Jr., he was dealing with a shoulder injury, but he was not that great in this series, right? But I'm just saying, like, if they had more depth, would we be looking at them to trade those players? Because what if they would have went to the finals? Like, basically, winning masks everything, right? Like, if there are issues, but you're winning, it masks those kind of issues. So I'm just saying that is something to keep in mind because I'm not going to blame it all, on Jamal and Michael Porter Jr. Like, there's only so much they could do when they're running like a 6-man rotation. So with that being said, I do think, and again, unfortunately, like, I try not to call for people to be traded, but I made a video last summer, I believe, saying I think it's the time to trade Michael Porter Jr. because he, at that time, his value was still pretty good, and he was still, like 25, 26 at that time, where he's still young enough where he still has value to other teams where he's just hitting his prime, so he can still grow and get a bit better, but that his contract was large enough because he's making like 30 million or whatever. So his contract was large enough that they could trade him and get another, good player back who makes 30 million, or maybe trade, for two players who are making 15 or whatever. So like I said last summer, I think it's time to move on from Michael Porter Jr. because I just feel like it made sense for both parties, and obviously that didn't happen. And so Michael Porter Jr., whether it's fair or not to him and to Denver, his value has gone down a bit because of, this playoff run. Again, he was having the shoulder injury, so we're not just going to, not say he wasn't hurt, but I'm just saying from the outside, to the other 29 teams, his value is not as high as it was last year. So Denver is, in my opinion, probably going to look to move him. And I'm not exactly sure which team he is the best fit on and, what team is going to trade for him. But I do think that is something to keep in mind. Jamal Murray being traded is a bit trickier to me because we've seen Jamal have really good playoff runs, and I'm not really sure what his value is. It's not that he doesn't have value. I'm not saying that. He definitely has value around the league, but I actually can't pinpoint what his value is and who or what type of player he would be traded for. So that's just more tricky to me. I'm not sure where they would go with that. And, because you have to put players around Jokic that fit his style of play. So we know Jamal and Jokic work really well together on the court. So I'm not sure what approach, they should go there. So that's my opinion on that. And actually, kind of just, to expand on this around the whole league, we may be seeing I don't know if it always happens this way. I have to go and think about it. But Denver being knocked out. Again, they probably were making changes regardless. But Denver being knocked out pushes them to make changes. Boston is a little bit different because Jason Tatum obviously has the, Achilles injury and stuff like that. So that really changed, the trajectory of their offseason. If they got knocked out by the Knicks, I'm sure there are some people who would say that they're going to make some major changes this offseason. And they might have potentially, still moved maybe someone like Porzingis or something like that. But if Jason Tatum never got hurt, I think there is a less likelihood that they make major changes and maybe change, or try to trade one of the players. Because obviously if Jason Tatum is still healthy, you still have a chance to win the championship next year with, the roster you have and then, moving one person or whatever. So I do think the Jason Tatum injury really is what changes the trajectory of their offseason. So it's kind of crazy that one playoff loss, again, Jason Tatum's injury is really what's, pushing it, but one playoff series loss is what's fueling major roster shakeups for the Celtics, for Denver, and then obviously for the Bucks. It's not because they lost, in the first round. They were having issues since they won the championship. They've had poor luck with injury with Chris Middleton and then obviously Damian Lillard and stuff like that. So this was kind of slowly building up for the Bucks, but we have three teams, and we don't know if Giannis is definitely leaving it, but we have three teams where we may see completely different rosters, completely different, three teams who, or at least two teams, Denver and, Boston, who people thought had a chance to win the championship this year. I don't know if people really thought the Bucks had a chance, but you still have Giannis and stuff like that. But three teams who have, superstar talent, who have championship aspirations, and the players are in their prime. We're not talking about Giannis being, 40 and stuff like that. And I don't know how often this happens that three championship aspirational teams in the same offseason are going to make, again, potentially, we'll see, but potentially going to try to make major roster changes. And I wouldn't say Denver's obviously not going to go into rebuild mode because they have Jokic and they're not moving Jokic, so they're going to continue to try to contend. But is Boston going to kind of do like a soft rebuild? Maybe, because Jason Tatum is obviously not going to play next year. And if he does play, it's not going to be till really late in the year. If he does play, but I really am not sure he's going to play next year. So does Boston go into like a soft rebuild? And then if Milwaukee's trading Giannis, they're probably going into a rebuild. So we are seeing the Eastern Conference powers be completely shifted. So it's kind of crazy to think about, but I just wanted to come here and talk about that. So thank you guys so much for joining this live stream. I hope you enjoyed this video.